One of the approaches to the treatment of ADHD that we're exploring is the use of neurotherapy, what's called neurotherapy, what used to be called EEG biofeedback. It's a methodology where a person is given feedback on the state of their brainwave rhythms. There are various rhythms that are there all the time to varying proportions, and what neurotherapy does is take an aspect of various brainwave rhythms, for example, the size of a particular rhythm, 12 to 14 hertz rhythm known as the sensory motor rhythm, or the alpha rhythm or the theta rhythm, which is lower frequency, for example, around 5 to 8 hertz, and give feedback to the person. And that feedback could be anything from a tone, which goes up and down depending on how much they're producing, and all they're told is try to make the tone go up. You don't even have to know what you're actually doing. All you know is that make the tone go up. Or what's also rather cute, particularly in treatment with ADHD, the feedback is given to the child in the form of their performance on a computer game. So the brainwave rhythm is picked up, analysed by the computer, and then fed into a computer game so that their performance on the computer game is related to how much of the desired rhythm they're producing. So as they increase a particular rhythm, and in the case of ADHD, one of the things that we've discovered is there are certain low frequency rhythms that seem to be associated with immaturity, which people try to reduce, and there's less of the higher frequency rhythms, and they try to increase the high frequency rhythm. In other words, they try to normalize the EEG for the person's age. And what has been found, although there's not been anywhere near as much research as really there should have been, is that neurotherapy certainly seems to be effective in the long term. In other words, over a period of 20 to 40 treatments, which is a long time, the changes that take place in the EEG then seem to be stable for years after without any further intervention or treatment. And what is also interesting is that the symptoms of the ADD and the ADHD, concentration, hyperactivity, improve. Not in all children, but certainly in some there's a dramatic improvement. And in fact, in the majority of children, from some of the articles that I have read, there is a suggestion that the improvements associated with neurotherapy are comparable, if not slightly superior, to what you get with stimulant medication drugs. And so there's enormous interest in trying to look at alternative treatments to ADHD which don't involve the side effects associated with the drugs. And the side effects, in many cases, are well tolerated, but in a minority of people, the side effects include things like reductions in appetite, for example, so the person doesn't eat as much, and there may be a tendency for growth not to occur as rapidly as it should. Sleep disturbances, these are stimulants. Mood swings and emotional lability and fluctuations. And in some cases, and this is minority, 5 to 8% or so, you actually get frank symptoms, psychotic symptoms, symptoms that look like schizophrenia, hallucinations. Now, these disappear the moment you go off the medication, but the point is that these sorts of side effects are things that parents are understandably concerned about. And so looking at what are the alternatives, and more importantly, what other non-stimulant medication approach might be effective for particular types of ADHD is one of the areas that we're looking at. So associated with that is the work on the role of nutrients, in particular essential fatty acids in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the fish oils. There's evidence that the omega-3 fatty acids as a constituent of our diet has been reduced over the last 200 years or so, and that these compounds are really very, very important for the developing brain. Particularly the membrane structure of the brain utilizes these essential fatty acids. and that our ability to synthesize them varies from individual to individual, and some people may not be as effective at synthesizing adequate levels and benefit from supplementation. Certainly, having fish in a diet is very, very helpful here. And the thing that parents used to do in the 50s and 60s, giving kids cod liver oil, actually had a very, very firm basis. Now we understand in neuroscience reality. It tasted awful, but it was really very, very good. And now we're now recognizing that. And the fish oil is one of the areas that we're examining.